Never seen anything in the house whatsoever. No water, no nothing. No, it's just totally devastation.
You know, if they want to use this as a floodplain, that's absolutely fine if it's going to save people's houses. But us farmers need properly compensating for that, because it could, it could put me out of business.
The destruction here is absolutely horrific.
The landscape just looks completely different. It looks like we're like on the coast or something. It's completely surreal.
Could mean relocation ultimately for significant regions near the coast in particular.
It's inevitable that unfortunately some farmland will unfortunately be flooded.
Lincolnshire, the second largest county in England, home to nearly 6% of all farmland in the UK. Situated only 9 metres above sea level, the extensive farmland of rich soil is perfect for British crops. But with the continuous threat of climate change, much of this landscape and the people within it are at risk to severe flooding. These threats have already begun to devastate people's lives in the county, from residents' homes to thousands of acres of farmland. I'm speaking to the people that have been directly affected about the floods and trying to find out why this has happened and what can be done about it. Henry Ward is an arable farmer just outside the city of Lincoln, who received a lot of media attention when his farmland became completely inundated with water. At 28 years old and newly engaged, Henry inherited this land only a month before it became completely unusable.
So we have had flooding on this farm in the past. This isn't a floodplain, it's low-lying arable land. So it flooded in 2007, but nothing like this. We had like a foot of water across it, but you could still get up and down the road and everything else. The levels of this flooding we haven't seen before here. It's daunting, I was in Norfolk actually when I found out about the flooding at a friend's. Someone rang me to say that the bank had gone. I rushed back, 3-hour drive, just dreading it the whole way, turned up, and it was just heartbreak. I mean, I've known this farm my whole life. It's been in the family for forever, and I couldn't even recognise the place. The landscape just looks completely different. It looks like we're like on the coast or something. It's completely surreal.
This is not just a problem for farmers across the county, but will also have a marked effect on the national economy as well. Lincolnshire is a largely rural county, with 80% of all its land designated for agriculture, which employs 1 in 10 of the local population, according to the Lincolnshire Research Observatory. This contributes £1 billion to the UK economy each year, as well as producing a large percentage of domestic grown produce to supermarkets. 5% of all domestically grown potatoes are produced in South Holland alone. So why is such valuable land allowed to be flooded? Well, farmers like Henry sacrifice their land to protect communities in residential areas across the county.
The only good thing that we can take out of this is I feel that we've saved a lot of people's houses in more urban areas, and thoughts must go out to people in residential housing, and they must be protected from flood. Urban areas must be protected over and above farmland. It's got to come up the priority list. However, we feel that we've taken this water on, we've saved the east end of Lincoln, Bardney, Langworth from flooding, but, for the Environment Agency and government to think that we should just take this cost on the chin, for my business, me not get any compensation, I think that's grossly unfair, to be honest.
Andrew Ward is the local NFU representative, fighting to protect local farmers. He also just so happens to be Henry's godfather.
Obviously, yes, climate change might be helping, but the problem we've got here is the waterways are not being managed by the Environment Agency, and this needs to change. We cannot expect farmers to take water like this on their land without being paid for it. Now, if it's a managed floodplain, that's a different story. If Henry was going to get paid for it and the 4 other farmers here who are affected was going to get proper payment for storing water. Flooding this land has saved Lincoln from flooding. It's saved a couple of villages from flooding. Surely the farmers who have taken this water on their land to save a community should be paid for it.
The risk of flooding is rising as global temperatures rapidly increase, causing extreme fluctuations in our climate. These high temperatures have caused masses of ice to melt and impact sea level rise. Scientists have said that if countries do not react soon, the damage will become irreversible. I met with Professor Edward Hanna at the University of Lincoln, who specialise in climate science and meteorology. He spoke about the dramatic effect this could have on Lincolnshire.
Well, a lot of the Lincolnshire coast is very close to sea level and is actually in parts, especially in the south, reclaimed land that was originally under the sea. So we only need relatively small rises of a few tens of centimetres, which are very likely to happen in the next few decades, that can severely impact those parts of Lincolnshire. And so it could mean relocation ultimately for significant regions of near the coast in particular.
Major areas in the county, such as Skegness, Mablethorpe and Boston, could be permanently underwater by 2100, reclaimed by the sea. Much of this land, which homes 30,000 vulnerable properties, has been designated as a high-risk area according to the 2017 National Flood Assessment. This number is rising as we continue to build on floodplains for our increasing population. One of these vulnerable properties belongs to 85-year-old Ida Kirk. So, what's this room?
This is the conservatory. That is the toilet door. Believe it or not, waiting for a bathroom to be fitted.
In the summer of 2019, the River Steeping burst its banks, flooding Wainfleet and its surrounding area in Lincolnshire. Ida's house and garden was completely flooded for the first time in the 45 years she has lived there. She was only given one night's warning to evacuate herself before her house and the rest of her belongings were completely destroyed by 9 inches of water.
The actual breach was somewhere just beyond that tree over there. But it wasn't this side, it was yon side, Wainfleet side. If you can see that tree. It was Wainfleet side, and it went down by the railway and across the field to us. Never known anything like it whatsoever before.
Did you ever think anything like this could happen to you?
Never dreamed. I don't want it to happen again. I definitely wouldn't come back if it happened again. People said for a start, if I was you, I should take the money and run. Well, it's not as easy as that, is it? When you've lived here all those years.
It was 5 days before she could revisit the house after the floods to witness the devastation which had been caused. All the belongings which could be salvaged were saved upstairs by her son and other family members, but Ida was unable to live in the property for close to 9 months.
The fire brigade came a bit later. This would be obviously 5 or 6 days later. They said, I'm sorry, we can't do any more pumping because nowhere to put it. The dikes were running over, you see. Nowhere to put it. Living through all that was absolutely horrific. Horrific. But now I've been with Brian 6 months. You think, oh yes, soon be going. But, you know, it's so slow, isn't it? I thought, well, everybody are asking, shall you be in for Christmas? Well, that doesn't worry me one bit, because you've got the family around you anyway, wherever you are at Christmas, haven't you? That don't worry me one bit to be out of it, but definitely it would not be dry enough to live in there.
So who is responsible for the protection of all this land and the prevention of flooding? Both Henry and Andrew Ward mentioned their frustrations with the Environment Agency, whose role it is to maintain the rivers and the waterways in Britain. They place numerous flood defences and schemes to try and slow down the threat of flooding in Lincolnshire, which includes the £6.8 million Link Shore scheme, as well as flood alleviation projects in Louth and Horncastle. I spoke to Morgan Ray, Flood Risk Manager at the Environment Agency, in the early weeks of the coronavirus pandemic, about their response to concerns raised by the public and particularly the farming community. What support is there from the Environment Agency for farmers whose land becomes heavily flooded and waterlogged?
So we endeavour to maintain the flood defences given the resources that we've got. So that's our sort of key role around agriculture. Unfortunately, agriculture does not provide for the same number of benefits than we can put towards more urban areas. So we work on money that the government gives us for managing our flood defences. That comes with it certain rules which are sort of laid down by the government, and that accounts for the amount of money we've got to spend on different areas. So particularly for urban areas, we get more money because there's more homes and more people live there than we do for rural areas.
Do you believe that a lot of farmland then is being sacrificed for more urban areas, residential areas?
No, what we're talking about here is the floodplain. The floodplain is a natural environment. There is natural floodplain, throughout the country, which is impacted by very high river levels. So in those circumstances, it's inevitable that unfortunately some farmland will unfortunately be flooded.
And in those circumstances then, how does the Environment Agency respond to farmers' claims of feeling possibly abandoned or not giving the correct compensation for when their land is waterlogged or flooded?
As I said, farming on these sort of floodplain areas does come with those risks of inundation. And our role is to manage our resources effectively, which we believe we do, to manage the flood defences in all areas given the resources and the priorities as laid down by the Treasury and Government.
Government funding is at the core to develop further progress in not only flood prevention, but also taking those vital steps towards combating climate change. The British government was the first major economy in the world to legally commit to becoming carbon neutral by 2050. The UK was also one of the nations to pledge to the 2015 Paris Agreement for a sustainable future. Yet our environment is rapidly changing and the agricultural industry is facing the brunt of it as their land battles extreme weather conditions. We've seen how rising sea levels threaten much of our civilization, and this threat is only increasing, especially in Lincolnshire, where the Environment Agency are working with the funds available to them to combat the issue. Agricultural land, like Henry's farm, continues to be sacrificed for Lincolnshire's residential areas in order to protect people like Ida from the threat of flooding. What effect this may have in the future remains to be seen.
But we need to be ambitious here. Looking forward in the long term, we need real change in how we manage water going forwards, because we're going to see more of this with climate change, and we really do need to have serious conversations about this, and not just conversations, we need action.